Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Stella Waruri, an outstanding childminder, PACEY member and ex-PACEY trustee, Charlotte Marsden from Hertfordshire, and Jenny Bond from Thurrock. They are going to join us later on in this session for a panel discussion on SEND provision and family support. So thank you for joining us, you three. I'm not sure if anyone's had the chance to read the report fully yet. It is long, but first of all, today I'm going to run through bits of the report and highlight some key findings. Then Stella, Charlotte and Jenny will join me for the panel discussion. And then later we're going to hear from Sarah Cotter from Plymouth City Council about the Childminding Week event that we put on with them earlier this week. So on to the report. The Magic of Childminding started with our awareness campaign in March, which I'm sure many of you have seen and supported. I think this went down really well within the sector. Childminders gave really great feedback, and I think lots of local authorities are using their materials and using that. Oh, sorry, could everybody put their microphones on mute, please? I think. Okay, thank you. And that's inspired basically this report, a 48-page report that brings together the transformational impact of childminding on children, families, local communities and the wider sector. And we really wanted to do this report because just saying childminders are unique and we need to address the decline is no longer enough. We need to show that transformational impact. And our aims of the report, besides that, were to celebrate and champion childminders and their impact. We wanted to highlight what could be achieved if we scaled up that support. And obviously, with any policy report, we wanted to urge governments in England and Wales to act now to reverse the decline in childminder numbers. And the report is a beautiful mix, I think, of a survey of almost 1,000 childminders, focus groups and interviews with 40 parents and childminders, setting visits, photography and filming, and some really great sector experts and local authority insights. So I'm really grateful to everyone who's inputted into this report. Section 1 looks at children. It's obviously the largest section in the report. We looked at a range of areas where we believe and we can see that childminding has a positive impact. And there's lots of areas in that report, that section, including play, speech and language, outdoor activities, trips and physical activities, sustainability and nature, meal times, nutrition, siblings and continuity of care, smooth transitions, SEND, and school-aged children. I'm not going to go through all those areas, and I really urge everyone to report, but I wanted to pick out some kind of key areas in this section. On babies, I couldn't believe this stat. 81% of childminders said that they currently care for a baby within their setting or have done so within the last 12 months. We knew that childminders were kind of excited about the expansion of the latest expansion of the scheme for the 9-month-old babies, and I think I was just surprised by how much that's been taken up. From conversations with parents and childminders, themes of warmth, trust, strong relationships were consistently highlighted, and parents particularly spoke about care, attention and the focus on smaller ratios that gave them more confidence. And I think with everything that's going on at the moment, it's really, really important for childminders to highlight the offer they provide for babies, and speak to parents about the kind of why they could be best suited to care for their kind of young child. So that was a really nice kind of section that we picked out. On play, we have a section on play, and 98% of childminders said they have access to a garden or outdoor space attached to their setting. And I think we know that childminders are experts at play. The idea that they often take a child-led approach, but also know their children so well and therefore able to personalise and tailor activities as well as integrate maths and English into everything they do. Something that really came out in the report, and that we actually want to, we know that childminders are great at play, but we want to really start promoting the positive benefits and impact of that childminding setting and play on a child's learning maths and English. Another section in the report, in the children's section, is SEND. This is obviously a very topical at the moment and hugely important. I am determined at Coram PACEY that the government is well aware of the incredible childminder send provision that already takes place, and B, we do more within the reforms to support childminders. I do want to pick out something. The EWA Inclusion Fund at the moment, that was announced, is calculated on the number of children per setting, not the number of children with SEND, and certainly not the number of children with complex needs. If it was, I believe it would be a very different story for childminder support. And I think there's so much work to do around understanding the data in comparison to other providers, and think about the support that is needed for them. From our own survey, and this is a huge statistic as well, we know that 29% of childminders care for children with diagnosed SEND, and 33% of childminders care for children waiting to be assessed. I think that's so important for the government to carefully, and local authorities to carefully consider where we put that support. And we'll go a bit more into this area during our panel session in a bit. Another section in the children's section is siblings and continuity of care. I love that stat that 76% of childminders surveyed said that they care for sibling children in the setting, and 16% of childminders care for their own children in the setting. It's great, I think, for many parents that siblings stay together. Childminders are already used to parenting styles and relationships, and this is something that childminders should absolutely promote more about their business. Annette, who was a childminder at our launch last night, she was speaking for us, and she had a lovely story. She cares for two siblings at the moment, and on a recent Sunday, she was called by the mother who was going into labour. So Annette popped round to look after the children on a Sunday, and 67 minutes after that call, the baby was born. And now that baby is on roll to start with Annette in spring 27. So it just kind of it mixes all of the family support that childminders provide. It thinks about the sibling care in this report. Sorry.
Have gone out.
Sorry, could someone put themselves on mute, please? Thank you. So I think it's a really lovely section in this report, and like I said, the children's section is huge, so I urge everyone to read it. And the kind of second main section in this report is the family section, and I think this is where people have been really surprised. We obviously look at more commonly thought of areas such as flexibility and offer and value for money, but what I love about this report is how we look at the positive impact of childminding on adopted and foster families, single parent households, low income households, and migrant families. There are some beautiful case studies in here. On flexibility and offer, whilst we always say childminders are flexible, again, I wanted this report to really go into what that entails. A few of the stats around this are 76% provide school holiday care, 42% provide emergency ad hoc care, 80% offer flexible start and finish times, and 70% offer short notice cover for unexpected changes. And I think, again, when you think about a parent making that decision about childcare, childminders need to have that conversation, and we need to promote that actually you're choosing, often you would be choosing a childminder who could provide holiday care as well as normal kind of term time care, and how that helps families. And there are many more stats in the report around respite care, overnight care, and shift-based care. And I know shift-based care is something that is particularly relevant in certain local authorities like Thurrock. I know there are a lot of shift-based workers in Jenny's area in Thurrock. So that's something that we pulled out in the case study with Thurrock a while ago. And then thinking about value for money for families. For many families, childminding offers a cost-effective childcare option that can be tailored to their working patterns. The recent Coram Family and Childcare Survey found that families in England and Wales pay less on average per week accessing childcare through a childminder than other provider types. The report highlights childminders to be the least likely to impose additional charges, with only 67% making additional charges to parents, compared to 91% on private group-based settings and 84% in nursery class childcare settings. This is despite childminders having the highest proportion of costs attributed to food and materials. And I think there is a conversation around, right, do childminders charge enough compared to other providers? Do they charge enough for what they do? But I think all the while that actually it's a more affordable childcare option, that is something that we should be heavily promoting to families, and the transparency around obviously consumables hopefully supports that at the moment as well. And as I mentioned before, I think what's surprising and lovely in this report is those case studies and stories around adoptive and foster families. Unless you use a childminder yourself, I think many find it hard to comprehend just how much support childminders offer families, going above and beyond childcare. We are in awe of the way childminders support adoptive and foster families, low-income families, migrant households, migrant families. And I hope that what comes across in this report is the genuine love, care, and compassion childminders have for their families. The relationships that they build with their families is quite hard to replicate for other providers. And like I said, unfortunately, parents don't know what they don't know. Unless they use a childminder, they don't know just how much childminders can play different in lives. But I think it's our job, Coram PACEY and people that work with childminders through this campaign, through this report, and through our future work to ensure that all parents know that that is an option out there. And the third main section on this report is looking at community. And when I think about community in this report, I think about two specific areas. Local community, so the work that childminders do to build a community around them. They're often considered pillars of their community, the way they take children out to learn about the communities, or because they're so involved in community activities and fundraising. Sue Smith, well-known Coram PACEY member in Cambridgeshire, is a prime example of this and all the fundraising that she does. And through our interviews with childminders following offset inspections, we're carrying out lengthy interviews to figure out kind of why they achieve strong standard versus exceptional. We're also finding out and putting out just how much they do to have a transformational impact on their communities. And that is something I think once we do more interviews, and we're encouraging all childminders or local authorities who had the offset inspections as a new framework to get in touch with us so we can do some full interviews with them. And the more that we do is the more that I want to pull out all of the specific things that they are trying to prove to Ofsted that they do that we can also use as well. It's really incredible. And the second kind of thinking about local authorities, local communities, is the local authority and how they support the work that you all do. Childminders form a vital part of local childcare sufficiency, offering flexible, accessible provision. Childminders account for 42% of all provider types in England. That's a significant part of the childcare market that local authorities rely on. So when we're always banging the drum about a decline in childminder numbers, I think it's just important to think about it's not just a number, it's not just a decline, it's the kind of removal of choice away from parents, and it's the kind of the lessening of the impact that you see in this report. And then we had to add one final section in the report, which is childminders. Obviously, we kind of we represent childminders, and what we wanted to look at as the profession in this report, what childminders feel about professional fulfillment, personal development and CPD, thinking about men in childminding, and also why childminders are so passionate and believe that the vocation is so magical. There's a huge stat in here that 44% have been childminding for 21 years or more. And I think this just goes to show that the passion that childminders have, the loyalty to the profession, the kind of rewarding kind of element of rewarding work that they do. We are at 25,000 childminders as of August this last year, which is the lowest kind of number of childminders that we've ever had. However, I believe that that 25,000 is we solely rely on a really passionate and loyal kind of childminder base, despite the challenges they face, are still going. So I want this to come across as, it obviously supports continuity of care, thinking about experienced childminders in the profession. It's something that we need to show off more when we're talking about childminders. And I'm also really pleased to see that men in childcare make up 3% of the childminding workforce in England, compared to 2% in other earlier roles. From our Magic of Childminding campaign and recent work, we have found lots of amazing husband and wife teams and couples. Some of them kind of where one is an assistant, one is a childminder, others where they're both registered childminders. We have 2 couples in the campaign, and I think it is obviously a tricky subject at the moment, men in childcare. However, parents feel about it. However, the current campaigns about CCTV, everything at the moment, but I feel that actually it's a hugely positive thing to be promoting husband and wife teams, men in childminding, because we know the impact and the positive benefits of men in childcare on children. Um, so that's like a really kind of quick overview of the report. Like I say, I would love for everyone to kind of, when they have the time to read the report, I would really love to hear your thoughts on um, kind of thoughts on there. We are always looking to, the case studies that you see in there, we're always looking for more case studies that we can use moving forward. So if you kind of have childminders that that you think would make great case studies, please do send them our way. And the report finishes off with recommendations. We are very, very clear about what we believe needs to change in order to reverse the decline and grow childminder numbers again. There does need to be a recruitment, a fully funded national program supporting childminders coming into the profession. And I think what's come across in kind of our work with local authorities is, you do so much, whether you have the funds or not, to try and create a pathway for childminders to come in. And that if there was a national funded program that supports recruitment, pre-registration to ensure quality, and then towards thinking about retention, then this would be one of the biggest kind of areas that would help childminder numbers. We obviously are speaking to them at the moment about making tax digital. I am bored of myself talking about making tax digital. I'm sure everybody here is bored of hearing about making tax digital. It's ongoing. I met with the minister last week, who's speaking to HMRC. We are hearing about kind of consequences of Ofsted. Childminders changing to a limited company and the implications on Ofsted, and the implications on insurance. So that's something we're investigating now. We are working with HMRC to review the impact in this first year, to prevent kind of the main cohort of childminders that will be starting in next year. Another area that we are heavily looking at the moment is reforming childminder funding in England. There are different areas of funding that we're looking at. Obviously, removing the rule, which we've again had recent conversations about, and we're working on there. I think it's also important that we now start thinking about a childminder specific funding formula. We are working with the coalition on this, about how we provide the right funding, but also we do a childminder specific one. And this might be something that we as a community feel we need to go ahead with or not, but that's something that we're looking into at the moment. And I think, again, we've tried to do this campaign, but from government, we need an awareness campaign, a national campaign for childminders to make them feel seen and heard and valued. This is often something that childminders still feel like they don't get enough respect and support. So having something high profile would really help. And then there are other barriers and other areas. So, there are barriers related to planning permission, local rental restrictions and commercial waste. So that we're tying that all into one, and we're trying to look at now how we tackle that. There is a letter from DfE that they've just written that childminders can use for landlords. I'm just waiting to see if I can share that at the moment, to encourage landlords to let childminders kind of use rental properties for their business. There is something around housing associations, and ensuring that more housing associations allow childminders to work from their properties. And again, commercial waste and all those things that keep cropping up, planning permission, I think they all tie into one area that we really need to have a look at and support in. And I've just seen a note about reinstating mandatory training. This is my biggest bugbear, one of them at the moment. They removed the mandatory training in the EYFS some time ago, 2 or 3 years ago. We were told in order to allow other providers from, other people from other provider types move over into childminding easily. I think many of us would agree on here that we need to make sure that new childminders come in, take part in that training, whether that's SEND specific, but I think it's definitely around childminding, and B, that it just shows that childminders that we respect their profession and that we think they should be trained. I think it goes a long way as well. And then our last one is obviously again topical at the moment is the kind of the SEND system. We really want to look at, we've kind of inputted in the SEND consultation, and we really want to look at how childminders are utilised more in this area, but also how they are supported better in order for them to increase that impact, and how, you know, many areas that they can upskill and develop their knowledge. We have a lovely case study in the report from Terry, a childminder, who, you know, through her training in Wales, she was around training for speech and language therapists, and for all different kind of upskilled areas there, that we really think actually it's something that could be implemented maybe through the new family hubs, and we're looking to see how that childminders play a part in the family hubs as well. So there are recommendations from the report. Again, it would be great if you want to put the comments in this chat, or if you have questions at the end, or if you want to kind of email myself about kind of your thoughts in those areas. And we will obviously take those on board. We're always looking to hear from local authorities about these areas specifically, and the barriers that they face. I know that planning permissions can be specific to some local authorities and some teams, but it would be great if we know that we have an overall consensus about mandatory training. That would absolutely support our case. If we know that we have an overall consensus with local authorities about childminder specific funding, it would absolutely help our case. So we would love to hear from anyone on any of these areas. Yeah, thank you. So now, like I said, it was a whistle-stop tour. I would like to welcome our panelists, Stella, Charlotte, and Jenny. Thank you for joining us, you three. Have you got your microphones off mute?
They are now.
Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you so much. So I wanted to look at two areas today, and we can take questions afterwards. Thinking about, first of all, SEND support. Jenny from Thurrock, I would love to ask you about Thurrock's decision, and you mentioned this recently, about to mirror the SEND support that you provide in group settings to childminders. What prompted that, and what exactly does that entail?
Yeah, no problem. So we've always had SEND support with our childminders. However, and there comes a big however with this, it wasn't consistent. It wasn't consistent through our group provisions. We have, right from the beginning, we speak to our childminders through our childminder induction training. They are introduced to the importance of inclusion within their settings. We do have an approach. We have something called the 3-step checklist, which goes through the assess, plan, do, review. So we introduce them to what that means. We have on our last childminder session, we have a meet the team session where they actually meet. It's all virtual, but they do meet our SEND early years SEND coordinator, because it's important. I feel that if you put a face to the name, it's easier to pick up the phone to ask for support. So that was all in place. However, it wasn't consistent in the fact that the level of support wasn't getting through to our childminders as it was with our group provisions, where group provisions would get a setting visit from our early years coordinator. They would be able to get outreach support from Portage, for example, that would go into the settings. Our childminders weren't quite getting that same offer. Reasons for that, one of the biggest reasons was capacity. So with that, we recognised that we were missing a cohort of children that were in our childminder settings that needed the support just like our group setting children's were. So we were in Thurrock, we recruited our early years SENCO assistant. So we've kind of doubled. It is only a 2-man team, but it's doubled now. So that meant that we were able to put more of a concentration on what that consistent approach is with our childminding sector. So we looked at, well, the SEND team looked at what that is to imply. We held briefings to support our childminders within what the new offer was going to look like, how they can effectively work through the 3-step checklist to make sure they were getting the maximum support and how they could access that support. In this time frame, the SEND team also developed our digital support mechanism. So we've got on our early services for early years webpage, we've got a self-help support page that has templates, it's got referral forms, it's got parent support on there, it's got all the contact numbers, and the childminders can access that as well as our group provision. So there's that equal support. With the support on going through the 3-step checklist, this was given all through a Pacific childminder information session, so they knew exactly what it meant and how they can work through it. We are now being able, or the childminders are now able to, when they go through the process, they can then get that direct SENCO support. And our SENCO can actually visit the settings, give that support, observe the children, support the childminder in what their next steps are, how to best plan for the child, what does that assess, plan, do, review actually mean. It could then be the next step where they've got telephone or Teams or additional visits. They will help them do referral forms, how to access the SEN Inclusion Fund. And if it does go to panel, if they will help do a structured and appropriate referral, we are now able to offer outreach in setting visits to our childminders, such as our portage workers will now go out for those successful applications or referrals, and will be in the setting working with the childminder and the child and the family within the childminding setting. So this, although, like I say, the SEN has always been there, this is really now mirroring what our group providers have always had. And now it's an equal offer for our childminders, which we are hoping, and we're getting that feedback that is valuing our childminders. We're seeing that we are really valuing our childminders, valuing all our children that have got additional needs in all provisions, and that they're not a missed out group. We see everyone with value, and we're giving the support that is needed to the children, but also to the childminders, that they grow in their confidence and their skills. We offer also free training as well on autism and speech and language. So again, we're doing all that we can to build that confidence up within our childminding sector.
Thank you. And I think that's important when I'm talking about STEM reforms. It's like I'm urging more support for childminders because it's not equal. But I think what it comes down to is that making sure that all children, no matter what provider type you are, what setting you are, if you need support, then that's absolutely there in the local authority, rather than saying, right, okay, this setting versus this setting, and what we do differently. I understand there are nuances sometimes to childminder settings, but it feels like definitely your approach there is just really targeting all children, and making sure that support is equal. So it's really lovely to hear.
I think one of the things which could have slipped, and you heard sometimes in conversation, is, well, they're only a small setting, they only look after 1 or 2 children. But we then turned that view on to actually, if you look at the childminder sector as a whole, you're looking at a medium-sized school rather than one individual. So we kind of turned our mindset approach, and it's not provider, although providers are really important and that support and confidence is needed, but it's the children. It has to, and children have got to come first, haven't they? They've got to be our first thought.
Yeah, definitely. Lovely. Thank you so much, Jenny. And Charlotte, you in Hertfordshire, I know you look after a large number of childminders. I think you have about 850, is that right? And I know, capacity is small in terms of your team. You've introduced a few things in the last year to improve SEND support for childminders. Do you want to tell us about them?
Yeah, so our changes haven't been quite as drastic as Jenny's, but along similar lines, it's about improving that accessibility to support. So our early years SEND team have adapted some of the training that was being given to all providers to make it more childminder specific, and they have adapted that training to also be more accessible in terms of the time of day that they're running the training. So originally training was being run in that kind of 9 to 5 window. And they've looked at ways of making it more accessible by putting it online in the evenings, because they understand that obviously childminders are on their own and they're in ratio, so they can't be necessarily taking time out of the working day to do that CPD. We have slightly simplified the process for making referrals to the early years SEND team as well, to help with that for childminders. And we have termly drop-in sessions, which again are online in the evening, where childminders can come and they can speak to the lead teacher for their area, get advice, run kind of what if scenarios, find out more about the process for making a referral, what would happen next. And then we have an inclusion team which, like in Jenny's area, can go in to the childminder setting and work with the childminder, and model interventions and so on that can be used and then fed back to the families, so that you can have that consistent approach within the setting and at home to help that child.
Right, thank you. And I think it's important around tailoring to childminders. The mandatory SEND training that will be coming up, as we know from anything that we do with childminders, there is always much better take up where you can promote specifically to childminders a product or a service. The SEND training will be relevant for every provider type, but always gets better engagement with childminders when you target them specifically. And sometimes that's possible, sometimes that's not. But I think it's always good to see that actually you're kind of tailoring the support. Even it's not quite as similar as Jenny in Turret, but it's actually a start. It's actually thinking about actually going into their settings. I think that's also what's important, because I think we are, with the family hubs, maybe relying too much on childminders going to seek that advice and support. And we want to know, with the help at hand in the SEND reforms, we want to know the kind of speech and language therapists, that they will be going into settings. So I think it's important that we are actually doing that, and that you're already doing that in Hertfordshire as well. So it's really great. Thank you. And then Stella, you've got lots of experience working in the crisis team supporting children with SEND previously. You're now an outstanding childminder with a very successful childminding business. I'd just like to talk about how your work as a childminder, again, is slightly different to other provider types, and how that benefits the children that you care for or have cared for previously with SEND.
Yeah, thanks. First, with my experience of having worked with the crisis team for children with SEND and their families within the local authority, I am aware, very much aware, that they face complex array of educational, social, and health-related challenges, and sometimes are at the receiving end of being exposed to potential risks of harm. So I've always got my safeguarding hats on. I've also noticed and observed that these challenges are often worsened by various factors like systemic gaps, delays, staff or practitioner changes. What I meant by that is practitioners moving on in the middle of support being given to the child with SEND, and the story has to be told again and again to a new practitioner, and again, inconsistency in personalized support. Don't get me wrong, this is improving though. So with this information, with this awareness, my difference to other providers, I use this knowledge and skills and experiences in my everyday inclusive practice beyond the childcare. And this is aimed and also to ensure that I bridge the gaps, um, meaning the systemic gaps, hence the delays in assessment and early intervention, early support, removing these barriers and making reasonable adjustments early. It's always about early, seeing this early. For one child, one heart, one mind at a time, but then from a smaller setting, to reduce inequalities from young age. I would like to share just 4 strategies, support strategies that I have implemented and still implementing that has benefited the children that have gone to primary school who are still receiving this support. So the first one is early identification of needs. So once this parent approach me, usually it's word of mouth. They just say it's, I mean, simple as go and see Stella. They will say, go and give it to Stella. Well, come and see Stella instead of go and give it to Stella. But then that's the starting point. So I accept it that way. So I get to know the children, I get to know the family just with this initial visit. But crucially, I look at what is the support system around them while starting with me. So I review this, and then I make sure to see, I check, I ask questions. I then take, as far as if I want to speak to the previous provider, I had a child who moved from Scotland to this place. I needed to know a bit more. I called the health visitor with the parent permission from Scotland. I said, tell me about this child. So I gathered this piece of information. For example, a child came to me, has a global developmental needs. I'll just put it that way. She wasn't known to the system. She wasn't known. So, I mean, parents were so scared to bring the child to me. It was another parent that told them in my setting. So all they said was, oh, can you look after my child? I saw the nervousness in their voice and I said, okay, tell me about your child, but they couldn't tell me everything. But as the day goes by, I kept to unfold, explore, find out. And then I started working on this child. As I'm speaking right now, this child has successfully gone to primary school, did not go to specialist school. I did source educational psychologist. I work with the Rodney team, which is now Manchester Cent team. Got into the Cent pathway. Um, Went to panel. It was discussed, and then in the midst of that, I was using Manchester provision of tool. There's some documents in order to create the specific learning target for this young child. So at the end, the educational psychologist explained, we're not taking her to the specialist school. She'll be in the mainstream school with the support so that the strong foundation that's been laid will not be declined but built upon, which is a success story. But that then is my second point here, linking the children back to the system, being known to the system, to the relevant agencies. Because I've noticed some of them are not known, except the one I just spoken about, example I gave. I don't know how many more there that are not yet known. So if I'm aware of it, then I'm on a journey to make sure they are really, really connected to the specialist care. Not that I wait till then, but what I also do is that to make sure that there is an integrated SEND pathway ready for them to go on if needed. Thirdly, I advocate for these children here because they have protected characteristics here and they do have the right to education and health. A story I would say, there's a child who has an EHCP. Again, it was another childminder who told mom, go to Stella, Stella will help you. So what I always do is to make sure I listen carefully, not taking only parents' part of the story. I find out who are the older relevant practitioners and agencies involved. So I gather up this piece of information. But with this child, I spoke to her school, the teacher, I spoke to wherever I have to speak to. But I realized that this child was only allowed 2 hours a day in the school, but he's got EHCP. To me, no. So I carefully ask questions, and by the time I have to find out more, mom had already taken the child out of school at home. And for me, he's young, he's going to be turning 5, early foundation, the best start of life. It's shaky here. So in summary, I have to go as far as to all the agencies. I spoke to my local authority and my quality officers. I went to the EHCP team. There was so much delay. There was, no response. In summary to that point, I did tell them first though, because I checked the timeline of the child when he has been in early years, when he was born, there were gaps. So basically, it's kind of been, can I say carefully here, failed. So I did tell the team that I do need a response. So why I did that was, could you help me, support me with some funding so that I can have this child some days in my setting to prepare him to transition smoothly, because he's turning 5. When he's 5, he can come to my setting as a childminder. So that is assessing some kind of early years education before going to 10-5 and go to school, but it never happened. So I did tell them, okay, I would have to raise this concern with either Ofsted or the Children's Commissioner. I had no response, so I did anyway to Ofsted. Ofsted responded and said, Stella, thanks for letting us know. Even though we don't have the authority to regulate the local authority, we get it. During our inspection, we will keep an eye on it. For me, I have to advocate to that. It's just one of the examples of really work to help the children. That's the benefit, they have.
Yeah. I think it's,
sorry, go on.
advocating for the child, but also for the parents, where parents don't feel like they have a voice, or it's a very new area for them where they don't know what's available to them. They don't know what the rights of the child is, because, your first example, the child kind of hadn't seen anyone or been assessed before. And it's just really important that all providers, I know you've gone above and beyond in that situation, but all providers kind of are supportive of those parents, because there are some parents who are louder than others, and that absolutely, is their right. But then, if we want all children to be supported, then we need to support all parents as well. And I think that's important, and definitely something specific to your practice and what you do. Thank you. And then just thinking about family support, this is an important part of the report for myself personally, and I think it comes across really well. Jenny and Charlotte, in your kind of local authorities, have you seen any examples of childminders providing support to families above and beyond, and I hate to say just childcare, but above and beyond just childcare, and the impact of that? Jenny, do you want to go first?
Yes, sure. I think yes is the first quick answer to that, and I think the above and beyond is because of the close relationships, those close trusting relationships parents build with their childminder. There is that more personable approach. You get to know, the parents get to know the childminder, the childminding home. It is that home from home basis, and the childminder gets to know in a deeper, more robust way the background to the family and the family dynamic of the child. And I think that leads to a deeper trust, which then, we've seen childminders that have, going back to the SEND, and I think quite a lot of childminders in different authorities will be able to have examples of this, where you have identified a child with a SEND need or a medical need, and those childminders will be supporting the families, getting additional information, going to appointments, so they really understand the needs of the child. We've had families that have been in crisis. It could be a death or an illness within the family, and childminders will be doing those out of hours times. It doesn't matter when you need me, you call me, because I understand what your family's going through, and the child feels safe in those childminder provisions. And that can be the child going to the childminders, or indeed the childminder, a bit similar to what our example last night was, or the childminder can go to the home. And again, because of that trusting relationship, it's seamless in the support and that ongoing support that childminders give families, not just the children, but the whole family there. On a more personable example, we've seen those relationships grow to more than just that, the childcare or the business side, if we want to put it that way, and that they've really become part of the family, where childminders become godparents to children, where that, it is that trust and love that is being built up between families. Another example looking at more the childminding and the childminding setup, you talked about shift work in Thurrock, and we've got a lot of shift work patterns in Thurrock, a lot of shift work employment in and around Thurrock. I have one childminder that's particularly coming to mind that has specialised in that shift work care, specifically the emergency services. So we're talking about she's offering that overnight care, that really out of hours care, where she can be really flexible to when the parent needs that childcare, what that offer looks like from pick up from school, to what that looks like for the care overnight, for what it looks like for those pickups when the parents are picking the children up in those morning times. So really looking at what is needed with those parents, with those children. What does that overnight or really unsocial hours looks like for the child? Not just that there's safe care for the parents to go to work and feel safe, but what does that look like for the child? How does the child feel safe going to bed in, not their home environment? So really putting that into place as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point there about emergency shift workers, because not only is kind of that difficult pattern to have childcare for, but a lot of emergency shift workers are married to other emergency shift workers.
Yeah.
And it's it's double the complications, isn't it? So it's a really lovely example, and I know it's in your area it's a big thing. And Charlotte, any kind of examples you can think of in your area around like that family support?
Yeah, very similar. In fact, I was just speaking with a lady who's registering as a childminder at the moment to offer that very service. She wants to offer an overnight service. She is currently a nurse, and she's leaving the nursing profession, which I do feel a little bit bad about, robbing her from nursing. But she's leaving, and she's seen her colleagues, her co-workers struggling so much. To get that care, to be able to keep them working. They want to work the night shifts because they get paid more money for it, but there's nobody to care for their young children overnight when they've got, like you said, a partner that potentially works in the same industry. So she's seen that gap in the market, and she's going to set up a business to offer that, which is amazing. But yeah, we see, like you, Jenny, childminders going above and beyond. When the mum rings and the train's delayed or cancelled and she's stuck in London and she can't get home, it's fine, leave them here. You can pick them up on the way back. We've had parents where there's been, an injury or an accident or something like that, and they can't then get the child to the childminder, so the childminder will go and pick them up or drop them off. They will take on the siblings and do the school runs for that period of time that they need that additional support. They will also offer that kind of emotional support that some parents need, dependent on circumstances. They see families through breakups, they see families through hard times, losing jobs, helping with fees when times are difficult, because they have that trust and that relationship. So it's such a unique type of childcare. It really is. And like you said, Kylie, if you don't know, you don't know. You have to have experienced it almost, or know somebody that has, to understand the kind of full impact that childminders have.
And this is where obviously we can promote, we want to start promoting this and start putting this out as much as possible, but this is where childminders need to take it upon themselves to promote themselves better, to show everything that they do. Not all childminders do everything, and that's why we can't say all childminders offer this support or this service, but that's why we want to say, per childminder, you should be selling yourself so much better, and you need to stop and think about everything that you do. And you take it for granted, families maybe take it for granted, but that's where you need to say, well, this is my USP, this is where I'm much better. And obviously that nurse that you're helping at the moment has already got an amazing client base that she can start her business. So there is so many opportunities there, and I think it's a lovely example. And Stella, obviously yourself in your childminding business, and kind of what kind of family support do you feel like that actually goes above and beyond that you offer, besides obviously the SEND support that you've just mentioned?
Yeah, I adopt the whole family approach here. So it's so important for me. That is working with the family unit, not just the child or
Hmm.
the adult, because any challenges faced by any of them impact on the other. So I ensure that there is an effective support for them to, first of all, I get to understand the family dynamic. It's so important
Mm.
that I do that in the relationship. But the family units that I really keep an eye on is a single parents family and those with the moms, because I've seen that they struggles more.
Mm.
And the sad part is sometimes they don't even know that there's support for that. So if I'm aware, then I'm able to source or tell them, the word is
Mm.
signpost them into these relevant agencies that can make their life better. In addition to that, I ensure that there's flexibility for the hours for shift workers. Some would like to start 7, so my opening time covers that period where they
Wow.
can be flexible around work, but also for the family needs. So that helps a lot. And then I've made my setting as a one-stop shop, kind of make sure I have all the CCG for students, parents, tax-free, universal credit. They can access all those things here for them. But most importantly, is support available during crisis here. When crises happen,
Yeah.
especially parents as the primary caregivers, my first thing that comes to mind is what would happen to the child?
Mm.
And especially if it's a single mom, what would happen? So I do help them. An example is that happened recently. And again, this parent called me weekend at 9 p.m. My phone rang. I looked at it. I picked it. I'm so glad I did. But they know I'll be there because not only the family whole family support, but I have this active listening approach and patience with them. So sometimes they come in and they are comfortable, they trust me, they'll tell me this. I do have my safeguarding hats on anyway, and they are aware that Stella will do so. And to go back to the crisis, just simply, this mom called, and to put, I mean, the whole thing in summary, I called for early help and other agencies. At the moment, he's had a safety plan in place. I did that because of the child, and everything is going well with them. And finally, I do empower the parents by giving them information that they need if they don't know. So I'm up to date trying to get every information and guidelines that I'm aware of. I get it from yourself, Coram PACEY. You send us email, and then the local authorities, my quality officers, I can't thank them enough. They share emails with us. And again, this support I give them is personalized to them. And then I make sure again, anything that has a concern, they know that I would raise a concern. So sometimes they come in the morning, mom said, "Oh, hi, Stella. Child A fell off the bike and had graze and bruises. I am telling you now before you even start filling your form and talking to social services." For me, that's so good because they know I wouldn't hide anything here. But it's not about how should I say, catching them out. It's about we working together to make
Yeah.
sure they receive this real and practical support. This is the
Yeah.
difference
Yeah, and
of
I
my
think,
setting. Yeah,
speaking for myself, there is nothing more frustrating for the parents than trying to deal with
yeah,
tax-free childcare, funded
mm,
hours via the local authority, the
yeah,
systems, and we always come at it from a provider perspective, but I think actually it's the frustration, isn't it? And the fact that you can actually help them with that is
yeah.
amazing as well. Well, thank you so much. We are running out of time, so what I want to do is just skip to Sarah, who's just going to give you a brief update about the event that we held during Childminding Week, and then if we have time afterwards, and if people wait around, we'll do some questions. So apologies for that, but I think I'd rather get Sarah in on the call now. Sarah, can you you're there? I've seen you somewhere.
I'm here
Hello,
in
thank you,
sunny Plymouth.
Sarah.
Hi everybody. I just wanted to start really. It was nice because Coram PACEY, while we talk about childminders and it feeling like family, I feel like I've been adopted by Coram PACEY to help with everything in Plymouth. For those of you that don't know about Plymouth, we've got the largest naval base in Europe, so we've got an awful lot of military families. We're expanding by 10,000 homes over the next few years, and actually childminding is going to be one of the core areas of childcare. So Coram PACEY are helping me with that and helped me with this year's childminder event, which was really, really positive. I'm still exhausted, as I'm sure Izzy and Elise still are. It's still having an impact. But just to give you an idea, when I first started in this role 18 years ago, we had 264 childminders in the city, and we're now down to 78. And that's with a big recruitment drive going on at the moment. So we're looking at how we can recruit, but also retain those that we've actually got within the city. But when we had our event, it was lovely because they all came together in a really positive way. We had 67 children and 26 childminders actually turn up on the day. And what was really nice was to see how because they all tend to work in their little groups throughout the city, but they all managed to come together for this one event, which was lovely. And I was listening to lots of conversations, and I know Elise and Izzy also had lots of discussions, but they were really passionate about what they do and really passionate about their viewpoints. We were talking, there was a lot of talk because actually on the day we had 11 military children actually there, so we were talking about the support for those because we've got a lot of transitions with what's going on in the current climate about parents going away, etc. We were listening to some of the really good practice, and I know Elise and Izzy are on the call, but we spoke to a lovely childminder. Just to give you an example, we've got 16 childminders that are age 65 and over, which does worry me because this is what's happening, is the longevity of staff. And one particular childminder, Maria, is 69 now and has been saying for about 10 years that she will resign, but she's just taken on a new baby and is going to give them another 4 years. So we've just got an amazing group of childminders, and we have got husband and wife teams. We've got, listening again to what Stella, Jenny and Charlotte were saying, is we've got a hospital where we've got childminders that are based nearby that are offering overnight care. We've got a high number of SEN children, so it's interesting to see how that develops. And actually on the day, on the play day, we had children on the spectrum that had earphones on, but they were still engaging. We made sure that we had sort of blackout tents, and we tried to have a quiet area, but let's be realistic, in one large hall that wasn't going to happen. But they were also welcoming. We had new childminders come along, so they were welcoming them into our own little family that we've got down in Plymouth, and they were sharing ideas with the new childminder. They'd given opportunities to actually meet up with them because they do have quite a lot of social events. We've got a sports day next week in one of our local parks that's being arranged by one of our childminders. So that was really nice. The other interaction I saw was some of the parents were actually dropping the children off to the event. And again, with the Coram PACEY team that were there was a lovely relationship between the parents. I was greeted with hugs by nearly everybody, which is nice. They know that I'm fair, but I will also say what needs to be said. So yeah, it was really good, and the promotion of childminding through Coram and PACEY as well has had a really good sort of feedback. It was good for childminders to be able to share their views with the right people, and I'm sure at some stage that will be shared with everybody else. But yeah, really positive, lovely experience to see them all in one space with their children, and actually to see the high level of care that was going on the day.
That's really
So
positive, because
thank you.
I know in the past, when everything's online, there can be negativity, and I think that's, we've discussed before how that's sometimes put prospective childminders off, and you know, that's something to struggle with. But actually having an event where you got your childminding community welcoming new childminders and it feeling really positive is like a good step, isn't it, in terms of actually, yes, there is a community here, and yeah, it's really nice to hear.
I also think when we have the negativity online, I do listen, and I also appreciate the things like that you've brought up in your report, the general wear and tear, taking that off them, and how hard it is to recruit, but also to stay as a childminder. And I think even when we're looking at the funding, and I'm sure all of the childminders would agree at the moment, because of the funding for the under twos, a lot of childminders have expanded that way because the funding levels are quite high. But actually, when you work that out, that the child might then, or if they're going to be with you when they're two, but if they stay with you when they're 3 and 4, actually your earnings could potentially drop by 45 to 48% in our city. You know, and suddenly you've got to adjust that you might be earning 32,000. The base, I've picked a childminder for research on it, but she's on 32,000 roughly at the moment, but in 2 years' time she's going to drop to 26,000. That's quite a big drop in your income. So, but yeah, it was good, and those discussions were had on the day as well, which was nice. But it was really positive, a really good experience.
Yeah, great. Well,
I'll
thank you
share
so
some
much.
photos.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I am conscious that people need to leave now. I think, does anybody have any questions specifically on what was discussed today? I'm sure we can follow up afterwards, but I'm sorry we have not left much time for Q&A really. But put that in the chat if you do. And I just want to thank Stella, Jenny, Charlotte, and Sarah for today. I think it's really nice to come together and talk about the report, but just to be together on Childminding Week, because obviously you support childminders so much. So unless there are any pressing questions, I'm going to finish it there. We'll follow up with the recording. I think we'll follow up with some kind of links to, you know, some of the Ofsted inspections and things that we're doing that might be helpful. And I've taken some of the things from today and maybe just following up more support in those areas as well. And Sarah, we had great feedback from your event as well. So I think there's just so much for us to think about there that we can do, but moving forward. But thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of the Childminding Week. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.